name is Holly, and this is The Murder She Shed, a place you hear rarely told true crime right in my peaceful setting of my little she shed. Today's case was suggested by a viewer, and just a warning, it is a very emotional case and a very rough case to get through. It's a little violent as well, so just a warning, viewer discretion is advised. Also, see this lovely spot on my chin? Well, let's just say Simon, my GS, who is now worn out, wanted to go for a four-wheeler ride, and, well, yeah, he heard me say four-wheeler. That's his favorite word in the English language. Let's just say a branch hit me in the face. Yeah, it was the branch's fault. It hit me in the face. And so you get to look at this already hard to look at, now worse, hard to look at face during this whole video. And I apologize. Sorry about that. Racheal was a young lady that watched people she thought she could trust dig her grave and force her to get into it. As she began to pray inside this grave, they would end her life. Before we begin, could you hit that like and subscribe so you can spend more time in my murder she shed talking about the dead with my little sleepy head. Yeah, that's an absolutely horrible rhyme as usual. Racheal Burkheimer was absolutely beautiful. She could turn heads any time she went out. Although she only stood at 4 foot 11 inches, her friends described her as being mighty. At the age of 2.5, her parents thought she was deaf because she just hadn't started talking yet. But by 3, the dam broke and she wouldn't stop talking. By 6, she could outshoot the boys in basketball. She had a range of funny voices that kept her family laughing. She had a smile that could light up a room and big blue eyes. While still a student in high school, Racheal would become devastated by the loss of 6 of her good friends, each of them victims of an unfathomable tragedy, from suicide to drowning to accidental shooting. One of those losses would crush her beyond words. Her closest friend, Corey Haynes, died in a horrific car crash. Corey was like a brother to her, and his death would change her the most. Corey had given her a ring before he died, in which she wore every day. It became one of her most cherished possessions. Racheal became severely depressed after his death, and her parents began taking her to see a therapist. She dropped out of high school and began an alternative school, but she soon would drop out of that too. Racheal further slipped into a deep, deep depression. She began using drugs and drifting further away from her family. In Racheal's spiral downward, she found herself hanging around a rough group of people. One of those people was John DIGGY Anderson, who had been in and out of jail and in a gang called Northwest Mafia. I'm just going to call him Diggy for this video. Racheal's father would learn about Diggy when he received a phone bill for $640, and the call came from a correctional facility. This is not something you want to know, that your daughter is calling somebody from prison. Racheal told her father she seen the good in Diggy, and he wasn't what people think he is. How wrong this would be. He wrote while in jail letters to her. One gave her instructions on how to get him out of jail and where to get a gun if she needed protection. He grew increasingly frustrated and angry when she didn't respond. On another letter, he wrote, "I love you," 33 times across the top of the page, and said if he had to, he would murder people to be with her. After getting out of jail, their relationship was hot and cold. Diggy was so jealous that he would sniff her hair and clothes to see if she smelled like another man. That's when you know you got a problem, girls. And then her sister would see bruises on her. Racheal started telling her sister that she feared Diggy and that he had been threatening her. Now 18, she seemed to be pulling out of the depression that had caused her to abandon her goals. She finally cut off her relationship with Diggy and started reclaiming her family ties. She started going to church with her mother. She slept with a Bible to fend off nightmares. Her sister later found a to-do list that included items such as reestablishing connections with positive friends. Racheal told her father she was going to get her high school degree and become a medical tech. She told her dad she had met a new friend who was encouraging her to go back to Linwood High School. They had both finished their senior year and have a real prom, and she could start fresh. His name was Maurice Rivage. She seemed excited about her future again, and her father was excited for her. Maurice, also a member of Diggy's hapless Northwest Mafia. Maurice was 18 years old and came from a troubled home. But Maurice and Racheal had bonded in their desire to escape the empty, aimless lives of the gang. In September of 2002, Racheal attended a party at a guy named Jihad's house with 6 other members of the Northwest Mafia. She had Maurice with her, so she felt safe. In the last few weeks, she had been concerned that the Mafia wasn't so happy with her. She had discussed it with her sister, telling her sister she felt that she could be in danger. The gang was sitting around playing video games and just laughing and smoking some Mary Jane. She joined them. Her and Maurice came in and sat down on the couch and joined them, and they were all having a great time. So suddenly, Diggy comes in and just starts smacking around a couple of the guys. Their laughing just seemed to infuriate him. Suddenly, Racheal felt like she could be in danger. She gets up to start to leave when Diggy grabs her by the hair and then just starts hitting her and threw her on the ground. Then some of the other guys started hitting her. They just started kicking her in the head, and one yells, "Turn up the music," so her screams could not be heard. Little 4'11" Racheal was helpless against these group of strong young men. Diggy drug her into the garage and bound her hands and feet with a rope and then gagged her with a sock and tape so she could not scream anymore. Then they left Racheal in the dark garage by herself while they went back in and ate pizza and played video games. Racheal lay in the dark on the cold garage floor, wondering what was going to happen to her next. She could hear them discussing ways in which they could kill her. While she was laying there, she seen some light, and someone had come in from the outside. When the girl seen Racheal, she seemed horrified. Racheal felt the girl could be her saving grace. This girl was Jihad's girlfriend and had came home from college. After seeing Racheal laying there on that floor, she went to the kitchen to get a knife, came back to Racheal and began cutting the ropes. Diggy came in just at that time and pushed her out of the way. The girlfriend yelled for everyone to leave the house, and she even threatened to call the police. She never does call the police, though. It would just be an empty threat that would get Racheal thinking she could be saved. Diggy then told Jihad's girlfriend to get out of the garage, and after she did, the girlfriend could hear them in there beating Racheal. They then stuck Racheal into a duffel bag and zipped it up, carrying the bag to the back of a Jeep and dumped her in. The gang members get into the Jeep and start driving to the foothills of the Cascade Mountains. For 30 miles they drove while she laid there and just wondered what was going to happen to her. Must have been the longest time in her entire life. Maurice, the guy she trusted to take care of her when she came to the party, had now betrayed her, and she was so confused and upset. After they entered the woods, they grabbed the duffel bag up and began carrying it for a bit until they found soft ground. But Diggy realized they forgot the shovels, so while Diggy and another member went and retrieved the shovels, Maurice was left alone with Racheal. Maurice unzips the bag enough to see Racheal's face and took the sock out of her mouth. Racheal began to plead with him to help her, and she knew she was going to die. Maurice said to her, everything is going to be okay, and it would not go that far. She even offered to give them $1 million. She then asked him not to let them drown her and told him she was cold. He seen the others coming, so he stuck the sock back in her mouth and zipped the bag back up. At that moment, making a choice to choose these gang members over a young girl who was supposed to have been his best friend. After Diggy returns, he hears Racheal making noise inside the bag. So he then takes the shovel and slams it into the side of the bag. As Racheal laid inside that bag, they began digging her grave. She could hear each scoop, knowing each time she was closer to her death. She had been worried about drowning, but being buried alive could have possibly entered her head. It would have been much worse if you ask me. The gang of thugs then dragged her out of the duffel bag and began to take her clothes off. But defiant and dignified to the end, Racheal insists she'll do it herself. Then while standing there naked in front of these men, Diggy told her to take off her jewelry. She looked down at her most valued possession, the ring that her best friend Corey had given her, and she began to beg to at least keep that. Diggy told her no. Diggy started to grab her, and she said no, she wanted to walk herself to the grave. As she stepped down in the shallow hole, the soil cold under her feet, Racheal was then told to lie face down in the grave. Instead, she got on her knees and started to pray. Diggy sarcastically told her not to worry about it. She would be up there with Corey soon. As he said this, he aimed the gun in the back of her bowed head, shooting her several times until the gun jammed. And then he unjammed it and finished off the clip. Diggy on the drive home tells everyone involved that loose ends will be cut off, implying that if anyone talks, the person will die. Several participants leave Racheal's car at her ex-boyfriend's house to frame him for her disappearance. Maurice and another gang member later burned the pillowcase with her clothes and jewelry. 4 days later, Racheal's family reports her missing. After 10 days lying dead in that makeshift grave, Racheal's body is finally found. They began to rat each other out at this point. One by one, police round up 8 suspects, many turning on each other to save their own hides. The gun was discovered in a pond with duct tape, jewelry, including the beloved ring Racheal begged to keep, clothing that the killers tried to burn, and the shovel used to dig her grave. Her father would say, "I'll never forget, I did see a photo of the gravesite after they had removed her body. And in the dirt, there was an imprint of her hands in the praying position, perfectly preserved. And that gives me some peace." They were also able to get her cherished ring back, and her mother keeps that with her. Ultimately, 8 people were convicted of crimes related to Racheal's kidnapping and killing. 2 received life, including Diggy. The rest are serving substantial time behind bars. All right, guys, thanks for joining me today. I know this is probably a case that you've heard before, but I felt it was one that definitely deserved attention by the murder she shed. You guys have a great week, and I will see you on YouTube soon. I'm waiting for a breaking new case, because seems like those help me to get subscribers. Subscribers can't find me unless I do those breaking cases. Not my favorite cases to do, but does help subscribers to see me. Well, anyway, as my lab out there is begging to get in out of the hot, I guess I will let you guys go. Tell y'all bye. Love y'all, and leave you with maybe some bloopers this time again. If you want to stay and watch them, you can. If not, I will see you next video. Bye. You to hit that liking. Would you stop it? That's my lab down there, making as much noise as he can. He's loud. You know you're cooler in here. By 6, she could outshoot the boys in the basketball. The heck? Racheal's father would learn. Racheal's father would learn was Maurice Revise. Revise. What are you doing? Licking your butt. You know you're licking your butt in my video. That's just wrong. You shouldn't lick your butt. That's rude. Very rude when somebody's videoing. You know they can't see you. Want me to see you? Move this over here so I can see you. Only thing is I think you can hear them. Well, I can hear you too.